Hey guys, MoiDawg here, and today we're going to be going over my top 5 resources for squad players. There's been a massive influx of players recently, both completely new and those who haven't played the game in a year or two. So if that describes you, or maybe you just need a refresher on how to improve your squad game, this video is for you. At the end of the day, squad is primarily about game knowledge. Of course, if you hit your shots, that's always good too, but most games of squad aren't necessarily won or lost on straight firefights. You need to move around the map and react to the enemy in order to be successful. And in this video, I'm not just going to share these resources, but also explain how to use them so you can increase your game knowledge as well. So with that being said, let's get started. If you've watched my Eye in the Sky content, you may recognize this first website here. This is Squad Maps, and it's a fantastic resource for both learning faction and vehicle matchups, but also the map layers. Squad Maps has every map and layer in the game. So if we're going to take ASRock, for example, it will then bring up the available layers: RAS V1, V2, Invasion V1 and V2, Advanced and Secure, Territory Control, Skirmish, Insurgency, and Destruction. Clicking on RAS V1, we can see an empty map with both teams' mains and vehicles available on the sides. Team 1 is on the left and Team 2 is on the right. And if you'd like to swap the sub-faction, simply click on the drop-down menu here and select whichever ones you want. Now, although I personally don't use squad maps for this next feature, I feel like it would be irresponsible for me not to showcase it. The map itself has the ability to help predict which objective layout you're playing. So if we take ASRock RAS V1 for example, we can use what we see in-game to help us prepare for the next point. From Team 1's main as the US, I can see that the first point available is Russian Outpost. This alone doesn't narrow anything down yet, so we'll have to secure it in order to see the next objective. Next is Western Spy Farm, and with this point confirmed, we can see that a large section of the eastern side of the map has been removed as possible objective areas. As you're driving out at the beginning of the game and you're trying to find a good place to set up a fob or maybe push the enemy team, anywhere right now in the middle near Neva or even near shipping or grain processing up north would probably be a safe bet. However, as the map develops and now that we've capped Western Spy Farm, we can see that Hill 57 is actually the next point, meaning that a Neva fob is probably not the best move, and now the majority of the game will actually be played on the north and west side of the map. In a real game of squad, this is usually as far as you'll be able to predict, and we can see on squad maps that dairy farm, fruit farm, and grain processing still don't narrow down the next point, so it's more or less of a waste of time to even worry about it. Personally, I don't use squad maps to predict the layers while in game. I believe it takes a little bit of the random chaos out of the start of matches, which I personally prefer, but I'd be lying if I said I don't use my prior squad knowledge to more or less predict where the points are going. Seeing 2 points on the west side of the river at the start of the game means to me that it's a pretty safe bet that we're going to be playing a western game of ASRock. And there are even some maps like Talil where the random part of random advanced and secure is actually very limited. And you wouldn't have known that unless you played hundreds of rounds of Talil or looked at squad maps. However, Squad recently added a nice feature where you don't even need to go to squad maps in order to see a general overview of where objectives can be. Without even going to squad maps, we can click the mode info on the team select menu, and it'll open up a nice little overview of the map and layer you're playing. As you can see, Talil RAS V1 will always have Eridu as the first point in the south and Batha as the first point in the north. So although there's a bit of variance in the points in the hangar areas, you're usually safe to push out and contest the middle straight from the get-go. Any fobs around here will usually set yourself up for success, so it doesn't really matter that much. Being an effective squad player, especially when it comes to squad leading or commanding, is all about reacting to the game as it develops. So although I feel comfortable enough without using something like squad maps while in game, I'm really using my over 4,000 hours of layer knowledge to make informed decisions. At the very least, it's always a good idea to open up this mode info tab in game in order to give you a quick and dirty overview of where the points will be. You don't always need to use squad maps, but now you know in case you want to verify and check it out. Next up is the Squad Mortar Calculator. Select whichever map you want in the drop-down menu and left-click to select a mortar. This will now visualize the effective range of a mortar tube in a real game of squad. Click anywhere in the radius and then select the mortar impact icon, and then you'll see the distance and direction in the form of degrees and mils at the bottom of the screen. If you want to move targets, simply click and drag the impact icon and you're good to go. To use this in-game, simply match wherever your squad's objective marker is on the in-game map and put it in the squad calculator map. This is a very, very nice website, and the map is incredibly thorough. If you select the Show Height Map option on the left side of the screen, you'll now see a new height layer on the map. As we can see, Talil is relatively flat. We all knew that, but we can still see how terrain will affect our mortars depending on where we set them. In our first location in the hangar areas, we can see that the effective range of our mortars is about 1,230 meters, but if we're to actually drag our mortar tube and have it placed at the bottom of this riverbed, we can actually only reach 1,217 meters. Again, this is another tool that I don't use in actual games of squad since it's very immersion breaking for me to just tab out and auto calculate targets, but at the very least I've used it to help understand how rounds travel and are affected by different heights in offline training. Additionally, it's a really nice tool to help plan mortar fobs so I know if I'm actually going to be able to hit objective areas. Now, how your mortars travel is dependent on both your height and your target's height, so utilizing the Mortar Calculator to help understand distance and direction can definitely help you in the future, whether or not you actually pull this out in a real game of squad. Now, next up is the Squad Armor Visualizer. This has every vehicle in the game and will show you how hard it is to penetrate armor depending on the round you're using. For example, taking a look at the Turkish M60T, click and drag the model to see all areas of the tank. The armor thickness is denoted by the colors, which you can match with the key on the left side of the screen, and clicking normal in the view mode will then swap it to internal view mode so you can see components like the ammo rack or engine. If you've ever played War Thunder, this visualizer is similar. You can select the round down here and then mouse over to the vehicle to see where it will pin and click to calculate the damage done. This does take angling into consideration, so for example, a shot here with an AT4 will not pin the turret armor straight on, but fire it from the top down and you'll remove the angling component, allowing the round to pin and do damage. This website will also allow you to compare vehicles by selecting the compare checkbox on the two you want. Clicking on the M1A2 and ZTZ will now give us a nice matchup where we can then play around to find out which is the best way to engage both tanks. For me, this is best used to find areas to try and pin into ammo racks or disable components depending on what I'm using. With the overhauled ammo racks in squad, targeting them can sometimes be far more effective in tank fights. Of course, you can cause tanks to cook off, but you can also force enemy tank crews to fall back once they realize their ammo rack is damaged. For example, shooting at an enemy Abrams from the front may do hull damage, but aim slightly to the right and about mid-body of the tank, and you'll actually pin through the front hole into the ammo rack, doing over half damage to the ammo itself. However, that same shot on a ZTZ will do nothing. So instead, you'll actually have to try and aim at the turret cheeks or try to hit the ZTZ when it's side armored. Do note that if you try and practice this in the offline training range, the damage models are not accurate. Instead, you'll need to go and find a Jensen's range that is on an online server, maybe even in the custom server browser, in order to replicate the proper damage values if you want real hands-on practice to see how your shots are affecting the enemy armor. Next up is the Subfaction Unit template, and as y'all probably know, Squad 7.2 added subfactions and map voting, resulting in most of the servers now implementing this voting process and requiring you to select your matchup for the next round. As awesome as this is, if you don't know what you're voting for, you can really set yourself up for failure. This public-facing unit template is actually curated and owned by OWI themselves, so you won't have to worry about random players adding incorrect information. Although you can click the info tab here during map voting to give you a quick overview of the faction, that really doesn't give you the whole story. For example, air assault and light infantry factions have an extra ATGM, while support factions can also place a second hab on their fob, as well as getting enemy intel. This enemy intel actually shows you the enemy's vehicle spawn timers, so you will always know what vehicle is off the field or about to be deployed. This spreadsheet is also a really good way to figure out which subfactions have vehicles at the start. The Armored MEA subfaction gets 2 T-72s and a T-62 the moment the game begins, while the British Combined Arms subfaction has to wait 15 minutes for their Challenger. This really could be the difference between a huge ticket loss at the start of a game, as the British Warriors could get absolutely dunked on by 3 MBTs and BMPs with ATGMs right out the gate. Map voting takes anywhere from 30 to 45 seconds, so it may not be the best tool to use while you're voting, but this is something I flip through every so often. The more you play, the more this comes naturally, but have this handy if you're a new player on a map voting server. And lastly, one of the biggest resources I use in Squad is the game itself in offline mode. You don't have to have a server to play around with all the vehicles and the maps, and instead you can simply access the console by pressing tilde in the main menu, typing admin change layer, selecting the map you want by typing it yourself or pressing up and down with your arrow keys, and hit enter in order to change the map. Now that we're in Yeho RAS V1, we can deploy as either team or jump into admin cam. Shift P will put you in the admin cam, and then you can use WASD to move the camera, space to go up, and left control to go down. This is actually how I fly around and record all of my Eye in the Sky episodes. But what I found most useful about admin cam on an offline server is actually figuring out where the capture areas are on objectives. By pressing 6, you will toggle the objective area zones, allowing you to find certain areas that may be best to attack or defend, such as corners of buildings or maybe tree lines that are just within that capture range. However, if you do want to simply play around in offline mode, you can spawn in any vehicle you wish by using these admin commands. I've linked the server administration page from the Squad wiki down in the description below, and here all you have to do is find the vehicle you want, copy that command in the wiki, open the console, paste it in, and press enter. A vehicle will now spawn in and you're good to go. This is also a really good way to create graphics and thumbnails, and you can also do other commands like admin force all deployable availability 1 to allow all deployables to be placed and mock up your own customized fobs, and you can also use admin slow-mo to speed up or slow down the game. By selecting admin slow-mo 10, you'll speed up the game, allowing for easier moving around or digging up these deployables, and you can just turn it back normal to admin slow-mo 1 if you want to get back to a regular game pace. All of these tools can be incredibly helpful for players, but I found the offline mode to be best used for helicopter pilots trying to practice their low flying, J-hooks, or hot drops near objective areas. The helicopter training included in the game is of course fine, but there's nothing like practicing it on a real map. But with that, those are my top 5 Squad resources to improve your game knowledge. Did I forget one? Do you have a question about something? Whatever it is, let me know down in the comments below, and also let me know if any of these things help you out. If you like the video, do give it a thumbs up, and of course, subscribe for more. But that's it for me. Good luck out there, and until next time, peace.